Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining and welcome back to Wall Street Silver. Joining us today is Nick Barisheff, President and CEO of the BMG Group. Great seeing you again, Nick.
Yeah, happy to be on your show again.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure having you back on. So, Nick, we just had Powell raise rates by 25 basis points. The Fed Watch prediction tool is says one more 25 basis points hike and then a pause. What do you think will happen?
Well, I think for the time being, they're going to keep raising rates until something breaks. That's the usual MO of central bankers, so that's going to go on. And a lot of people think that it negatively impacts the gold price. However, if you look at the 70s, interest rates were being raised throughout the late 70s at the same time as the gold price was hitting new highs, and it only stopped when it hit 18%.
So you were saying back in the 70s they were raising rates and then gold was shooting up?
Yeah, and throughout the late 70s, just look at the gold chart in the late 70s and the interest rates in the 70s, so on. So that because most people think that if you raise interest rates, it's negative for gold.
Mm-hmm.
That type. So that wasn't the case before, and it's not the case now.
So what happens, Nick? Like, what effect will it have if Powell pauses rates? What effect will that have on stock market and precious metals like silver and gold?
Well, it's everything's kind of upside down because like the stock market seems to rise when he raises rates instead of lowering it, and this so doesn't make a lot of sense, the stock market's reaction to it. So, but one of the things that's hasn't been in the mainstream media is the fact that I think it was 2 weeks ago that Saudi Arabia announced that it would now take any currency to purchase oil.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's been the reason that the US dollar is the world's reserve currency, because you needed to um, use dollars to buy oil.
Right.
And the original deal with the US made with the Saudi royal family is you price oil in US dollars and we'll provide you personal protection.
Mm-hmm.
So Russia now has stepped up and said and is willing to provide protection to the Saudi royal family. So that's changed the dynamic there. The issue is that as uh, as you start uh, countries start moving away from the U.S. dollar, because if you don't need U.S. dollars to buy oil, you don't need U.S. dollars.
Mm-hmm.
All those US dollars will come flooding back to the United States, and that will create skyrocketing inflation. It's not the printing of new money, it's a repatriation of all the existing money.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the
Uh,
Saudis will actually do it, Nick? Do you think they'll actually pull through with it, like after they've seen everything that happened in the
they've,
past with Iraq and Libya?
well, their Iraq and Libya was that uh, the US was able to, uh, bomb the hell out of them and so on. But if Saudis are, first of all, much bigger and then aligned with the Russians and the Chinese,
Mm-hmm.
then that's a much bigger problem. So it's not going to be that easy to resolve.
Mm-hmm. Nick, in your opinion, are we are we past the point of no return in the United States, like with debt and spending that's out of control? Are we completely past the point of no return?
Well, it seems so because everything was based on free cheap money, like the stock bubbles, the real estate bubbles, all that has a result. So when you have a contraction, it's going to be a painful contraction.
Now, every central bank outside of the West is piling on their gold reserves. We were talking about that a little bit earlier before we recorded. Does that concern you about the US dollar not being the reserve currency, Nick?
Well, exactly like I said, the only reason it's the reserve currency is not because of sound economic fundamentals. It's because of this deal with Saudi Arabia, back, I don't know, 30 years ago it was done. But if that changes, then that changes the picture for the US dollar completely. And both China and Russia have made it public that they intend to create an alternative currency that most of the BRIC countries are signing on for. A lot of that was precipitated by the sanctions on Russia
Hmm.
and the confiscation of the reserves. So the countries are looking at saying, well, this is way too vulnerable to stay in US dollars.
Do you think it'll work, Nick?
The BRIC countries make up about 60% of the world's population. So they all get on board, then that gives fundamental reason, for that. So and some of the discussion is that they create a alternative currency, but backed by gold, because between China and Russia, they have enormous gold reserves and probably more than they officially report.
Now, we're talking about China and Saudi Arabia. Let's say they move away from the petrodollar and they start trading in the yuan and a gold back yuan. How do you genuinely believe the US will react?
Well, it's hard to say. I don't know what they can basically do to react other than create a war to deflect the opinion, and that's what it looks like is going on in the Ukraine.
Hmm.
That's not getting de-escalated; it's escalating. Uh, you know, last week it's tanks. Next week it's going to be F-16s, and sooner or later you're going to really piss off Russia, and they're going to start nuking European cities.
So why is mainstream media ignoring everything that's happening in Europe? Like you see now, Nick, all the protests that's happening in France due to the pension reform. Why is the legacy media so silent on this?
Well, it's hard to say, but the media is basically become I don't know when it changed, but it became a propaganda machine for an official narrative, not really the news. Like the the so-called COVID pandemic was, perfect example of what was covered and what wasn't covered. So this has been going on for some time, and this is what leaves people vulnerable. Like for the mainstream media isn't reporting on the record gold purchases by central bank.
Right.
So the population as a whole isn't buying gold, and that these are supposedly the top financial experts in the world. So why are they buying gold and you're not? You know,
What are you currently investing in? Are you investing in silver and gold, Nick?
that's all I've invested in, because my view is that the overall market, be it stocks, bonds, real estate, is due for a major crash.
Hmm.
So if you effectively take your money off the table and put it into real money, which is gold and silver, and wait it out, then once the crash is over, then you redeploy and create a diversified portfolio. Like for example, my background is also in real estate. And in Canada in 2008, there's a REIT called the Dream Office REIT, which is a $12 billion REIT
Wow.
that has all the AAA office buildings in Canada in it. Well, it tanked 84%.
Wow.
Okay. The dividend yield at the bottom was 30. So the people that are staying invested are going to miss out on an opportunity of a lifetime, because it's then at the bottom that you go in and buy, stocks, REITs, et cetera, at massive discounts that most people can't even imagine.
Is that what you're waiting for?
Yeah.
So
And while
that's
you're waiting, yeah, you're not losing anything because gold's going up and so on. So just have patience and wait it out.
uh,
People have been sold on this idea of always being invested. That's never held up in history. There's all kinds of periods throughout history where you want to take your money off the table and step aside and wait for the bottom to manifest. There's no point riding the wave down
right.
when that's what's coming.
Right. So that's super interesting you said that. So Nick, the debt levels is almost 31 or 32 trillion and exploding upwards at exponential rates. And the only way the federal government can continue to pay basically all their bills to even keep up on borrowing is just more credit. Is there a point where this breaks and becomes an ultimate black swan? Like, what are you looking for?
Well, it's hard to say when it breaks, but it always breaks. There's never been a fiat currency system in history that ended up in anything but an abject failure.
Mm-hmm.
Not one.
Yeah, 99.9% of fiats fail.
Not 99.9, 100%.
Yeah, that's horrible. So what do you expect for the US dollar then, Nick? Are you seeing another 10 years, 15 years? Can they even carry this out for another 5 years at this current debt levels and interest rates?
Well, I think the days are numbered. And see, unlike the past 20 years, gold has gone up an average of 10% a year. So it's been kind of gradual increase. And most people didn't notice. Like when I started our funds, the price of gold was 300 an ounce.
Mm-hmm.
But it kept going up steadily year after year after year after year. I think that's going to change. There's going to be some events where you're going to wake up Monday morning and it's several $1,000s higher, and you've missed the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Could that event just be even like what we were talking about earlier, the Saudis switching to instead of the petrodollar completely moving to China and Russia, or Russia and China coming out getting their money backed by gold? Could
But
that could
they've announced that's what they're going to do, and China is now buys more oil from Saudi than the U.S. does. So they're the more important customer to begin with. And now the China can pay in yuan. So that's transitioning like right now. So again, that's not something that's hit the mainstream media.
right?
It's kept a lid on, but once it becomes obvious, then the days for the US dollar are numbered.
Mhm. So we're as we're on the topic of precious metals, why do you think precious metals is being suppressed or manipulated? Is it a global conspiracy or mutual aligned forces making great money to keep it suppressed? What do you think?
Well, there's a saying that says that a rise in the gold price is a non-confidence motion in the government. So
Mm.
it's real money. So you can't have a strong US dollar with a rising gold price. One or the other's got to lose. So to maintain the US dollar hegemony, you have to suppress the gold price. And that's done through all the paper mechanisms, the COMEX, the leasing, etc.
Do you think, Nick, the only way the US and the Federal Reserve can fight China and Russia is, let's say they do roll out their gold-backed currency? Can they just come out with a CBDC? What do you think the Fed will do?
Well, it's hard to say. I don't see how they can control that, because like combination of Russia, China isn't like Iran or something like that.
Right.
So they won't be able to do anything to stop it. So the fact that like in the past, plenty of fiat currencies have crashed to zero and or close to it, and that's likely what's going to happen. So if you're holding US dollars or you have US dollar investments, it's going to be painful. And there's going to be no warning. This is just going to be something that one day will happen and won't be gradually rising at 10% a year. It'll be thousands of dollars over a weekend.
So, Nick, like a lot of people are talking about China's gold reporting system and why is it so distorted and not transparent? Why do you believe that is?
Well, China needs to buy more gold, and they've been buying gold in the sovereign wealth fund rather than the central bank. So it's in China's best interest and Russia's best interest for the price to be down until they have accumulated the amount that they intend to accumulate. China has made it public that they want to end up having 10,000 tons of gold in reserves, compared to the purported 8,000 tons the US has, which hasn't been audited in 50 years and probably doesn't exist. So when they've bought enough, then they can announce that, oh, by the way, we've transferred 7,000 tons from our sovereign wealth fund to the central bank. The sovereign wealth fund doesn't report anything to anybody, so no one knows what they have, and that's where the gold purchasing is done.
That's super interesting, Nick. Well, Nick, we want to thank you so much for coming down to Wall Street Silver. It's an absolute pleasure having you come back. Hopefully in the next 2-3 months we can have you back.
Okay, sure.
Awesome.
Pleasure.
Talk to you soon, Nick.
Okay, take care.